get into case studies now. So, Randy, can you share a case study on how CompTIA is preparing for the megatrends? Something where you could share with us how CompTIA has changed to prepare itself, or has helped an organization change in order to prepare themselves for some of the IT megatrends?
Yeah, I thought I would, you may not know that you need to care about how our certification process works, but I think this is a good opportunity to talk about that. We, and this is, it's a process-driven activity. So how we help individual companies, as well as industry preparers, is how we develop our certification. So this is not, CompTIA staff going in the back room and writing things down and hoping people like it. What happens is we really talk with industry and figure out what's going on. Joe Payton is in the back of the room. He does that all day long, figuring out what is going to work in the marketplace. So we bring SMEs together from all over the world to our offices, talk down and do a job analysis of what's really going to be happening in the next 3 years. Then we come back and we create objectives off of that and say, all right, here's all the different things we need to write the questions on. Then after that, we come back, we write all the items, we review all of that and go back in. So in the last couple of years, we've pared down our certifications actually. So we're giving less to the market to say, hey, you need to pay attention to that. And we've really focused on what are the things that we're hearing. So guess what? It's security, that's where the market is telling us they want to be, and that's where we're going to be. And it's constantly evolving that. Even as our core certification that we started with was A+, and as we've moved into others, including Network Plus, all that stuff's starting to converge. And so we're having to pay attention to mobility, exactly. We're having to pay attention to all the different threat vectors that start in networking, all the different troubleshooting ways that people have to really actually do things. We've moved from answering questions to going through simulations. And that is making a huge difference, and people hate taking those tests because they actually have to know what they're doing. It's good, and it's helped that business grow, and it helps make the country, frankly, since we do so much DoD business, more secure as a result. So that's how we're helping to identify. If you look at all the trends we've talked about, each of those ways really helps make a more complete IT worker, and it's going well.
Joe, can you share a case study with us on how you're preparing or how you prepare?
Sure. So one of the activities, as we've just been talking about, there's so much reliance on the technology in the entire environment, whether it's teaching, administration, research. And as part of that, again, working with the president and board of trustees, we decided we had to really up our disaster recovery business continuity aspects. So we engaged in a concentrated process and project with VMware so that we could back up all of the administrative systems at VMware. And this is the first time they had done it with a university. And so we worked hand in hand together. We put together a program, and we were able to really set up a good business continuity plan through VMware itself. And that really has done very well. In fact, they published an article in a number of the technology communications, technology publications about the process. In addition, as part of that, we looked at what we could move off-site. And so obviously one of the major things, as I talked about before, is our learning management system. And so now we host the learning management system so that if there was ever a disruption, school closings, weather, unfortunately, we had it during Sandy. We were closed for 4 days. Faculty can continue to process. Again, it's very important in some of our programs where things have to be completed. If you look at some of the science programs, particularly in pharmacy, if you don't get to a certain point, that course does not qualify for that student to meet the requirements in the program. So disruption is very important to us. Again, working as a university, we prioritized it and we moved on it. And it's been very good for us, knock wood. And I guess the true test is that if we never have to use it.
Now, Brian, again, you speak to many CIOs across Fortune 1000 companies. Share a case study with us about what stands out. You hear a lot of their challenges, a lot of the outcomes. What stands out to you?
There's two I'll throw out there. One, I'll just sort of, I'll note really quickly, and I'll kind of say, go off and read about it, because I don't want to get too much into the detail, because it's kind of a still evolving story in many ways. But Johnson & Johnson. the CIO of Johnson & Johnson. His name is Stuart McGuigan. Stuart is a very, very, very interesting guy. He has a master's degree in, I think, cognitive science. He's just one of the most interesting, most thoughtful people I've met in the business. He was CIO at Liberty Mutual and CVS before going to J&J, so a lot of really big, large-scale company experience and a lot of change management experience. So he was the CIO of CVS when the acquisition, or they sometimes refer to it as a merger, but acquisition of Caremark took place. So essentially created a new business model in the pharmaceutical space or pharmaceutical delivery space. At J&J, he has led a tremendous turnaround of the organization. What had become a little bit of a slow, stagnant, or dormant organization in terms of innovation, and really just in terms of just having some simple organizational policies in place. You can imagine J&J's huge. If I told you how many companies J&J actually owns, you'd be shocked. How many countries they're in, you'd be shocked. So he did this massive transformation that's interesting to read about in its own right. But he was then also put in charge of their entire digital health initiative. So when we get into buzzwords, these aren't buzzwords because these are real things, right? Stuart's using data analytics in a lot of really cool, not just cool, but meaningful ways for their business. He's using machine learning, he's using robotics, he's using all these different things. And you could look at it and you can say, oh yeah, that's just a bunch of buzzwords, what are they doing? The really great thing about it is they decided on which technologies to use based on what the corporate strategy was and how to deliver best on those goals. Start with the goal first, answer with the solution second, right? So what they've done in that space is pretty incredible. J&J has a goal by 2018 to offload 85% of their workloads into the cloud. 85% for a company that big. And they're already most of the way there. They're doing some pretty amazing, a lot of other pretty amazing things. I don't want to give just as an unnecessary plug for my writing, but I did write an article about this last year. But it's been covered some pretty, in different ways, different publications. So definitely check out Stuart McGuigan at J&J if you want to see sort of the model of what a lot of CIOs should be today. The second one, I'll try to go through this quickly, is Lyndon Tennyson, who's the CIO of Union Pacific. Russell flashed my book up there before. It's chapter 5. Union Pacific, you would think, oh, they're a railroad. They're one of the oldest companies in America. They were established during the administration of Abraham Lincoln. No joke. That's how old they are. And you think it's a railroad. How innovative or advanced could they be? You think it's one of the most old world industries around. What kind of technology do they use? We talked about the Internet of Things, the amount of sensors that Lyndon has deployed across all of his tracks, all of his equipment. They're on the bearings, they're on the tracks, they're on everything. He's got cameras, he's got all kinds of different indicators in terms of Internet of Things to look for, possible derailments or equipment that's in need of repair. Obviously anything that goes wrong on a railroad is not a small matter, right? But one of the other interesting things is it's an interesting story of two different worlds or two different eras, if you will. One of the biggest things they've been working on over the last several years is rebuilding their core transportation management system. This is like the central nervous system of the company, right? It was written on 11 or 12 million lines of assembler code back in the 60s. When I first heard this, I'd never heard of assembler code. I don't even know what that is. So they're rebuilding that, but Lyndon's idea for doing it was to do it to build up a new system essentially around the old one. So you're running two in parallel. This isn't like a build it up, rip out the old one and just replace, hit the switch, and we're good to go. He's building this up. He's doing it discreetly, putting all just different, new steps and new pieces along the way. So a lot of a buzzy word right now is microservices. I don't know if everybody heard of microservices? Mm-hmm. I got a couple of blank stares there. Well, if you don't know about microservices, you should look into them. Lyndon essentially started creating those before the term was even coined because it was a means to an end for achieving the business goals. He's doing all this. He's replacing this old legacy system with some cool new stuff, but it's a long-term project. Union Pacific deals in long-term capital expenditure. So this system that goes in is probably going to be there for a very long time, or at least the core of it is going to be there for a long time. But what's really cool about Union Pacific, and I'm almost done, sorry. What's really cool is while all that's happening, and while you think about it being an old world company that obviously is very smart when it comes to technology, they've actually built, out of their own organization, some technologies that they sell to their competitors. Does anybody buy any technology from your competition? It's rare. There's a few companies out there that do it. I mean, a few. But Union Pacific, I was so far ahead in doing things like a locomotive simulator that they said, interesting, we can commercialize this. So they've done a number of different things. Lyndon has run one of these subsidiaries and been involved, obviously, closely with a lot of the others. But they have a handful, or maybe I think even more now, companies that they've developed out of their own organization that they now have productized, commercialized, and sold to their competition. They're even going outside of their competition now and looking at just different ways that they can customize the product or expand its offering a little bit and sell it to other companies. So if you think about the world that Lyndon, the CIO, lives in, think about all the things that are going around in his orbit. It's hard to compare that with almost any other CIO I know, and that therefore makes his organization one of the most interesting I've ever heard of. So worth checking out. Union Pacific. Who would have thought?